Brandon Fong hated growing up on the free lunch program at school, but growing up without financial resources taught him to be resourceful. Before the age of 25, Brandon wrote a book, ran the marketing for an education company with over 250,000 students, traveled to 23 different countries, and even did a $45,000 launch on his first online product. Today, he's on a mission to help 10,000 entrepreneurs build wealth through the power of connection while prioritizing their health and relationships. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Brandon, I love that you are a networking expert because I am too. How did you become a networking expert and what is your story?
Well, great question. Super excited to be here, and hello, PR Maven Nation. But I would love to dive in with my story. So I got started, I always like to say that I started at Wisconsin Hills Middle School. So that was my middle school I attended, and the point that I always like to start with is when the school bell would ring for lunch. It was actually my least favorite part of the school day. And the reason why is because the hallways would flood with all the sixth graders heading to lunch. And if you look closely, you'd see little nerdy Brandon hanging out behind everybody else, procrastinating on his way to lunch. I had an incredible Bugs Bunny gap between my teeth with these nerdy glasses. And the reason why I didn't like going to lunch so much is because I would go through the lunch checkout line. All my friends would be behind me. I'd have my plastic tray filled with whatever lunch was for lunch that day, and I would type in my student ID, and then up on the computer screen, it would show the words Brandon Fong, $0.00. And the reason why it showed that is because my family qualified for the free lunch program, and I was super embarrassed. Some days I would hide out in the bathroom. Some days I would try to distract my friends from seeing it. The reason why I tell that story is because back then I used to be so frustrated because I didn't have the resources. But what my parents taught me is that if you want to be successful, it doesn't matter about having current resources. It matters about learning how to be resourceful. And one of the number one ways that you can learn how to be resourceful was learning how to connect and develop relationships with people. So I'm so grateful for my parents. And they would even let me skip school when I was 16 years old. And they would let me go to these local networking events and meet with people that were literally 4 times my age. And so that's kind of how I got my start with networking. Is that was my first experience being that 16-year-old. And so I practiced learning how to get out of my comfort zone, having conversations with people for many years. And if you fast forward to 5 years later, I ended up using those connection skills to connect with a successful entrepreneur. And it turned into an incredible relationship where I ran his marketing for 3 years. I helped add while I was on the team, we added over 100,000 students to his online courses, 1.5 million downloads to his podcast. And I know, Nancy, you're a traveler yourself. So during that time, I got to travel with my wife. We've been to 23 different countries together. So that was absolutely incredible. And then also, Jonathan got into a very high level group called Genius Network, which is a 7-figure group for entrepreneurs. And it costs $25,000 a year to attend. And I got to attend those meetings and network and learn from some of the world's most successful people there. And so there's really 2 main reasons why I tell that story. One is because I learned the power of what one connection can really do for you. And I truly believe that if anyone listening to this right now, you're always just one connection away from really getting to that next level in your life. So that's one thing, is that you're just one connection away. And the second thing is I grew up in that family that didn't have that much resources financially, but I had the opportunity at age 22, being the youngest member in Genius Network and working with incredibly successful entrepreneurs and seeing what it was like to be incredibly financially successful. And I realized there was more than just the money, right? So that's why I created my newest brand, 7-Figure Millennials, where the goal is to inspire millennial entrepreneurs to prioritize their happiness, health, and relationships while achieving their biggest entrepreneurial and financial goals. Because I don't think that you should be, I'm really passionate about changing the definition of what success means, because I really believe it needs to incorporate that component of happiness and, the relationships in your life. So that was the other key takeaway from that story, is learning the impact of being able to make sure that you're prioritizing the important things in your life. So we can take that anywhere you want to go, but that's definitely how I got my start, was those days when I was nerdy little Brandon, just looking to make a difference.
I love your story, and hats off to your parents. Are they still alive, Brandon?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I learned so much from them, and very, very blessed to have them.
Yeah, I love what they said to you about it's not really what you don't have now. It's what you can have if you have the right mindset and the right connections. I know my mom, when I was considering what college to go to, my mom used to always say, it's not going to be what you learn in college. It's going to be who you meet. And that network of people will serve you throughout your life. And she was so right about that. My mom's 87 years old, and I am so grateful to her for what she taught me. My late father, too, because he was in sales, actually. He was an electrical engineer who also sold electrical equipment, and he understood the power of having a network. And also what you're saying, too, about health and happiness, because really that's priceless.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a quote. I might butcher the exact quote, but it's like, a man who has his health has 1,000 goals, but a man who doesn't have his health only has one. That's obviously to become healthy. So I think it's really important to make sure that that's prioritized from the very beginning. I
agree. And I'm a big one for happiness, too. That's one of my priorities in life. I love to be happy. So, Brandon, what about 7-Figure Millennials? What's that concept?
Yeah, so I think I touched on it at a high level, but I mean, another inspiration behind it was the quote by Jim Rohn: become a millionaire not for the $1 million, but for what it will make of you to achieve it. And I truly believe that as entrepreneurs, our business is an external reflection of what is going on inside of us. And I've learned from very successful entrepreneurs that whenever you're looking at getting to the next level, it's not the shiny new tactic. It usually has to do with your mindset. And so that's why I'm so passionate about entrepreneurship. Is, to me, entrepreneurship is a way of adding value to the world, and it's a vehicle that allows you to practice getting better every single day. It's kind of like meditation. It's like whenever you're sitting down, you're trying to clear your thoughts and you're bringing your mind back to the present moment. To me, entrepreneurship, it's like, okay, I'm going to toss all these crazy things to you, and can you learn how to take that and apply it to your life and be better as a result of it? And so that's why I'm so passionate about entrepreneurship. It's just a way to add value to people. And it's a way to really become the next version of yourself, is when you have this business that's an external manifestation of what's going on inside. So that's the whole mission behind it, though, is what I said before with my story, is to inspire millennial entrepreneurs to prioritize their happiness, health, and relationships while achieving their biggest goals. Because I think in our world today of entrepreneurship, there's lots of talk about the hustle and the grind and working 100 hours and doing all these crazy things. But at the end of the day, I always say, you don't want a successful business. What you want is, you want a business that provides you with the lifestyle that you want, that allows you to live the life that you want. And so that's why I'm really passionate about introducing this into the conversation and starting it early, because I've seen so many successful entrepreneurs spend years to build a business, and they're miserable on the inside because they built their own worst prison, And so how can we change that and start it from the very beginning and understand how to build a business that at its core makes us happy and builds the life that we want?
Well, I agree. And there's a term that I learned actually reading the book Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty, which I recently read. And there's a term called your Dharma, Dharma. And that's like the thing that you were born to do. And I'm so grateful that I discovered the thing that I was born to do, which is public relations, when I was, probably still a teenager. And I think people who are entrepreneurial and who can discover their superpower early in life are so blessed, because because then it's not really work. It's just your life and you're doing what you were born to do. So that ties in with my next question, actually, which is about personal branding, because I think personal branding is really owning your unique superpower and being able to convey that in order to grow your network. And how has personal branding helped you, Brandon?
Oh, it's been everything. Super grateful that I kind of started studying it and learning from incredible people from the time I started college and even before that. And to me, having a personal brand is really like, what are people saying about you when you're not around? Like, how are you communicating yourself in a way and sharing your story in a way where people can understand that and share that with others? And like, what feelings are you evoking when they hear your story, when they read content or consume your content online? So for me, it's really, as Joe Polish says, or I think it's Joe Polish or Gary Halpert, it originally comes from. It's like, how can you can and clone yourself? And in today's world, we're so lucky to have all these different platforms where we can have many clones of ourselves running around in the form of content or other online mediums. Like, how can it really allows us to expand our impact beyond what we could ever do if we were just talking to people one-on-one. So how has it helped me? It's really been a constant study of learning how I can produce leverageable assets that represent who I am and can make an impact on a deeper level when I have them kind of working for me. They're like little mini-me's running around, I guess. So for me, it's just been incredibly valuable to like learn how to go about the process of writing a book and leveraging a book to get your foot in the door and develop incredible relationships with people. And I've recently launched my own podcast, the 7-Figure Millennials podcast. And that's another aspect of my personal brand that I leverage to help develop relationships with people, as I'm sure you have yourself, Nancy, getting to talk to all the incredible guests on your show as well. So for me, it's really just been an incredible way to study and learn about how to distribute my content, my message, and my story to open the doors to incredible relationships in my life.
Well, it's clear to me that you had good mentors, so I'm really glad that you found people early on in your life and your career who taught you about the value of a personal brand, because you certainly can articulate it well and you're living it. You're a living example of a young person who has really grown into your personal brand, and you've shared it in so many ways, including a book. And I think, as the author of 2 books myself that I published, within the past 5 years, a book is the best business card, really, when you meet someone new and you can give them a copy of your book that really lays out your beliefs and your values and your mission in life. I think there's nothing better.
Absolutely.
So, Brandon, how has your personal brand opened up new opportunities?
Man, so many ways. I mean, I think when I told that story of being able to kind of get my foot in the door and start working with Jonathan Levy, the company Superhuman Academy, where I was running the marketing for very, very early on, that if I hadn't been focused on my personal brand, like I wrote my first book, I think I was 20 when I wrote that book. I wrote it in college. And so like that kind of like opened the door to me showing that, hey, I'm somebody that is doing non-traditional things to really try to push myself forward at an early age. So it's like that opened the door to my connection to Jonathan. And then Jonathan, my personal brand, kind of expanded to include all the work I was doing at Superhuman Enterprises. And that kind of helped me when I was working and networking with the Genius Network crowd. And that opened the doors to another incredible high-level mastermind or strategic partnership network that I've been a part of. So to me, it's always kind of like one new aspect of my personal brand always opens little doors. There's another quote by Joe Polish. I think it's Joe Polish again. I keep quoting Joe today. I guess he's the one I'm quoting, but it's like tiny hinges swing big doors. And it's like every relationship that enters in my life, I believe, is an incredible opportunity to develop that relationship and leverage it to swing bigger doors. And so that's really how my personal brand has helped me. It's just like opening those doors, opening those conversations. And like I said, from my story in the beginning, I believe that you are just one connection away from that next level in your life at all times. And so I'm always looking for that next, developing those genuine relationships with people, because you just never know where it's going to take you.
Brandon, the more you talk, the more I think you're a mini me.
I love it.
Yeah. So you definitely have the same attitude about meeting people and opening doors as I have always had. And, I'm so grateful that it has always come naturally to me. And it sounds like it has come naturally to you as well.
Yeah, very grateful for that. And I guess I have my parents to thank for that as well.
Yeah. So LinkedIn, obviously LinkedIn is a really important tool that I believe all professionals should be using. And how do you use LinkedIn to enhance your brand?
So LinkedIn fits within the whole universe of another way to kind of open up your personal brand, right? So like I love LinkedIn as a platform, but I always like to think about it from the first principle perspective. So it's like a first principle in science. It's like it's the thing that can't be deduced anymore. So once you understand the first principles, you can reason back up and create anything. So to me, LinkedIn, yes, it's a phenomenal platform, but I think understanding the first principles before it that go into making any kind of online platform, whereas LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, that's really the important stuff. And to me, the reason why LinkedIn is so special is because the first and the upfront part of it is being able to tell your story in an impactful way. And that's what your summary is for. So like, that's an incredible way to be able to tell your story. And I think that as some tips for people listening, it's an incredible opportunity for you to kind of really showcase who you are and what your personality is. And my personal preference is I like to write my bio in the first person. I like to write it from the perspective of like, I'm having a conversation with you and you can get to know me a little bit more. And so that's one way that I can kind of can and clone myself again. It's like I have a version of me that lives on LinkedIn that showcases, my experiences and my story. And another way that I've been able to leverage LinkedIn to really open the doors to some incredible connections is I learned this from Wayne Breitbarth, who's one of the top thought leaders on LinkedIn. He's got a book called LinkedIn Power Formula, I believe. But he taught me the strategy that's incredible with LinkedIn. So anybody listening can take this and leverage it to just develop incredible connections. So Nancy, I don't know if you've experienced this personally, but like for me, at least, whenever people told me it's like, oh, you should be asking for referrals, it's kind of like an awkward question to ask. Like you don't really know how to ask it. Like how do you ask someone for a referral? It's awkward to be asked that question if it's not asked the right way. And so what Wayne teaches is you can use LinkedIn advanced search filter and I can search connections of somebody else's. So if I'm connected to you, Nancy, I could use this and I can search through your connections on LinkedIn. And one of the things that you can do with that data is if instead of saying, hey, Nancy, do you know somebody you could refer me to, which that doesn't really spark any imagination in your brain. You don't really know who you can refer me to from that perspective because it's such a broad question. I haven't helped you to help me, I guess. But compare that to me going on your LinkedIn. I identified 3 specific people. So I could say to you, Nancy, hey, Nancy, I spent some time on your LinkedIn prior to us having this conversation today. And I actually came across 3 specific people that I thought would be really interesting for me to have a conversation with. Would you be opposed to me asking you a few questions about them? So instead of me asking about generally, who do you know that could refer me? I can say, hey, Nancy, do you know Bob? Or do you know a Jim? and have a specific conversation around them. And when you can ask a specific question like that, it really opens the doors to getting warm introductions and really expanding your ability. So those are some of my favorite things to talk about on LinkedIn is just as an opportunity to tell your story. And then that LinkedIn multiplication strategy that I learned from Wayne has been very valuable for me as well.
Well, I like that approach, Brandon, of specifically asking for 3 introductions off of somebody's contact list, because typically people who you're connected with will want to help you, and that's a very specific way, rather than just saying, oh yeah, I'd appreciate a reference sometime, or I'd appreciate an introduction sometime. So thanks for that tip. And also thanks for this book you've recommended, LinkedIn Power Formula. I have not read that, but I will definitely put that on my list of things to read, which is a pretty long list, but it's really
never ends, does it?
Exactly. But that's part of our key to success is we're continuous learners. So I can tell that you two are always learning, and I am as well. And that's what keeps me going in my career. So we're going to take a short break now, Brandon. We'll continue our conversation shortly, but I want to tell everybody in PR Maven Nation about my book, Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand. It's now available as an Audible edition. I recorded it here at the Portland Pod in Portland, Maine, where I am today. And you can now purchase this Audible edition, and it includes actionable advice on growing your network and growing your personal brand, just what we're talking about today, and how to grow an audience and take care of your audience. So we'll give away a free Kindle version if you go to prmaven.com/giveaway. And we'll be back in just a moment with more from Brandon Fong.
Do you want to grow your client or customer base? Perhaps increase brand awareness? Maybe tell your unique story more effectively? Of course you do. but you may be worried that you don't have enough expertise to make that happen. Well, no worries, PR Maven Nation. Let the PR Maven herself, Nancy Marshall, show you how easy it is to get your message across effectively using a powerful yet simple tool, a message map. Nancy's training is often called informative and constructive, well-designed and impactful, with a perfect blend of theory and real-life experience. You will leverage Nancy's expertise to create your own message map when you register for this comprehensive online video training course, which is broken down into 4 easy-to-understand modules. Normally, this course is priced at $147, but for listeners of the PR Maven podcast, that's you, PR Maven Nation, it's only $29 when you enter the code word podcast during enrollment. It even includes a workbook and bonus content to guide you through the process. So go to prmaven.com and click on the Message Map Mastery course to enroll today. Remember, enter the word podcast during enrollment for a special discounted price of $29.
Welcome back. Today we're talking with Brandon Fong, who's an entrepreneur, marketer, author, and world traveler, a lot like me, actually. And he's the founder of 7-Figure Millennials. And I want to dive right back in with more questions for Brandon. Brandon, why and how do you use a personal website to showcase your brand?
Yeah, great question. So I think it kind of goes back to what I said about LinkedIn, where it's like all these platforms are pretty much an ability for you to kind of extend your brand beyond yourself. And it's funny because usually when I give like a presentation to an audience, I'll ask people, like, what do you think is the most important online platform out there? And, I'll get people to raise their hand, and some will say LinkedIn, some will say Facebook, some will say Twitter, and they'll keep going and going. And I'll keep saying, no, it's not that one, not that one, not that one. And then some people will get really creative and they'll be like, is it like Amazon? Like, I don't know. They're running out of ideas. And sometimes somebody will kind of shyly raise their hand and be like, is it your personal website? And I'll be like, bingo. Because I think that it's really important that we think about it from the perspective of what we can actually control. Because at the end of the day, if Mark Zuckerberg shuts down Facebook, or LinkedIn ends, it's like there were marketers back in the day that were doing stuff on MySpace, but like nobody talks about MySpace anymore. So for me, all the other platforms are very important. Social media platforms, that is, but having your personal website is the one thing that you can control, that you have 100% autonomy over how you want to be shown. It doesn't depend on an algorithm. So that's why I think a personal website is so powerful, is because it's the one thing that you 100% own. And very similar to your personal website is your email list. And so having a personal website allows people to kind of almost like if somebody were signing up for a user account on Facebook, right? It's your equivalent of you having a personal website. Somebody signs up for your newsletter, then you have an opportunity to continue the relationship with them by providing them with incredible content and maybe even ways to enter in your world and have a conversation with you. And so it kind of goes back to my answer. Like I said, it's another way for you to tell your story. But I think the thing that differentiates it from everything else is it's the one thing that you have 100% control over. And having that as an asset is one of the most valuable assets you can have.
I agree, absolutely. And I do believe, too, that an email list is one of the most valuable assets of any small business, because people covet the space in their inbox. And if they will allow you to send them content and, clog up or fill their inbox, that's a big compliment, if they don't unsubscribe you. So I put out a monthly e-newsletter. Do you put out an e-newsletter also, Brandon?
Yeah, I email my list about once a week, sometimes a little bit more than that. And usually it's like the newest episode of my podcast that come out, but usually it's based on educational content that I'm looking at adding in same value and showing people how they can, my topic is 7-Figure Millennials, is prioritize their happiness, health, and relationships while achieving their biggest entrepreneurial goals. So yeah, to answer your question, I email pretty regularly.
Well, that's great. And, you're doing what I talk about in my book, which is growing your audience and growing your brand. So hats off to you on that. So how do you leverage your brand to open the doors to endless opportunities? Because I could tell you're the kind of guy that's thinking of endless opportunities all the time.
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, I have a specific 3-step process that I call the magic connection method. So if you want, I don't know how much time we have available, but I can dive into the high level of that, because I think that that's really if you want to take all the assets that we've been talking about so far, if it's your LinkedIn, your personal website, your email list, your experiences, how do you then leverage that to actually reach out to people and develop connections? So is that something you want me to dive into those 3 steps there,
Yes,
Nancy?
definitely.
Awesome. So I'll do the high level version of it because I have trainings of this that can go a while. So we'll kind of keep a condensed version. But I just want to preface it with saying that the whole goal of the Magic Connection method is simply to get somebody to respond to your email. I find that so many people reach out, they'll ask to book a call, they'll ask to check out your website. And sometimes it's like if you ask for too many things at once, it gets confusing for somebody. And so the whole goal of this whole process is simply just to get someone to respond, to open the doors to that relationship happening. So with that said ahead of time, there's 3 parts to the Magic Connection method: the hook, the irresistible offer, and the no-oriented question. And the hook at a high level, it's basically the number one mistake that I see people make when they send an email is they make the first part of it 100% about them, right? Like you'll see an email where it's like, hi, my name is Brandon Fong and I've done blah, blah, blah. And I'm the founder of XYZ and wrote this book.
And I important.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately with that, as tempting as it is to feel like you need to position yourself and posture yourself and show that like, this is why I'm reaching out to you and I'm important, they don't care about this at this point. They want to know why it matters to them. So the first part of the message is always about them. It's 100% about them. So, some ways that I do that is 1, do you have a mutual connection with them that you can reference? 2, have you consumed their content? Like if you're listening to this podcast right now, like you're consuming some of the PR Maven content that's valuable for you. So like that's something you could refer to in an email or maybe some other podcast or blog that you're listening or reading. So like those are things that we can refer to. And so it's just 1 to 3 sentences of showing that we took the time to research the person that we're reaching out to. Because, in this world today where people are doing so much rooftop marketing, right? They're screaming and saying, hey, like pay attention to me. We just really want to show that we care about the person that we're reaching out to and that we actually did research on it. So that's just 1 to 3 sentences, pretty concise, just showing that you actually took the time to research them. The next thing that we transition into is the irresistible offer. And so now that they know, they're like, okay, this person actually took the time to research me. How can we add an incredible amount of value to them? And there's a huge difference between an irresistible offer and just a normal offer. So I'll give you an example of the first irresistible offer I ever created when I sent my message to Jonathan, the entrepreneur that I was working with, is I had been following his podcast. I had been on his email list. I had been consuming his products for months, and I had been taking meticulous notes and research on it. And so I put together like a whole bunch of ways that I could add value to Jonathan and help him acquire more clients and all that stuff. And I reached out to him and I told him about all my ideas. And I said, Jonathan, I want to do this for you 100% for free. I don't want to be paid for it. And if you don't like my work, we can discuss an opportunity for maybe to have a conversation about that moving forward. But right now, I just want to show that I can add a lot of value for you. And if you don't like my work, no harm done. I won't care. We can part our separate ways and it's all good. So I made it very easy for him to say yes. And I made it so that he had a lot to gain. And so that was like a truly irresistible offer. So if you're listening to this right now, what's the equivalent of an irresistible offer that you can create for somebody? Can you help someone solve a problem? Can you help them gain more exposure? At the end of the day, can you help them land more clients or increase revenue or make more money or make their lives easier? How can you create an irresistible offer that would make someone lean in? There's this quote by Dean Jackson: a compelling offer is 10 times more powerful than a convincing argument. So if you can create a compelling offer that makes people lean in, that's really the secret sauce to making people want to actually respond or work with you. I've been kind of going for a little bit here, Nancy. Is there any questions you want to ask, or should I just keep going with it?
Keep going. But one thing I think is interesting about your approach is that really thinking about your targeted audience and how can you help them solve their greatest problem, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's very important. It's like a copywriting principle is to enter the conversation that's already happening inside of your prospect's mind. So how can you think about it from the perspective of the person receiving the email? What is valuable to them? And how can you clearly articulate that in a way that would make them want to start the relationship with you? So anyway, so now at this point, we've covered the hook. So they know that we care about them. We took the time to research them. We've shown that we have something that's incredibly valuable to them. Now, remember from the very beginning, the whole goal is to just get them to respond to us, to open the door to the relationship. So the last part is the no-oriented question. And I learned this from Chris Voss, who wrote the book, Never Split the Difference, one of my favorite books. It's about negotiation. And if you're listening to this and you haven't heard or read the book, Chris Voss was an ex-FBI hostage negotiator. So he's the guy that's on the phone when there's some lunatic in the bottom of a bank, in the basement of a bank with several $1 million and 10 hostages about to blow up the place. Like, what do you say on the phone to that crazy person to make them not do that? And so one of the things that Chris teaches that he learned from all those years of doing this crazy negotiations is the concept of a no-oriented question. And the way I like to explain it is this, is that every single day, if you're listening to this, you have a finite amount of yeses that you can give, right? Think about it. Every single time you say yes to something, what does that mean? It means that you have to give away your time. It means you have to give away your money. It means you have to give away your energy. You have to give something away when you say yes to something, right? But compare that to the exact opposite. How do you feel when you get to say no to something? You feel like you're in control, right? That you are not being pushed, that you have the ability and you feel safe about being able to say no to something. And so that's what a no-oriented question is. It's basically you flip it on its head and you create a situation where you're asking a question where their gut reaction is to say no to you, actually, instead of saying yes to you. So inside of the irresistible offer, sometimes what I'll do and what I encourage people to do is to do some kind of work ahead of time for the person to make it show that you actually invested in the relationship. So I might say something along the lines of, I put together a Google Doc that has, 3 ideas or 3 something that is super, whatever the irresistible offer is to them. And then the no-oriented question would be, would it be a bad idea if I sent that Google Doc over for you to check out, right? And if you end with that question, that's it. You don't end with anything else. Now you are allowing them to lean in and say, no, it's not a bad idea. Tell me more about it. I'd love to hear more about this topic. And so that's it at a high level, is the showing that the hook, showing that you genuinely care about them, you research them, the irresistible offer, showing that you have something of value that you can add to them, and then ending with a no-oriented question and stimulating the response that will allow them to reply to you and then lean in so that you can have an incredible conversation and build that relationship.
Well, this is really, really valuable advice, Brandon. Thank you so much. And I love the way you think, and I love the way you have an established personal brand of your own, but you also honor other people by taking the time to research their background, as I think you did with my background before the podcast today. So again, I think your parents raised you right, and my hat's off to you. I know you're going to have a very promising future and a happy, healthy life.
Thank you.
So how can people get in touch with you to follow up, Brandon?
Yeah, great question. So I actually put together a little bit of a special little gift for people of the PR Maven podcast, the PR Maven Nation, right?
Yes.
So I put together a short link. So it's something you probably haven't heard of before. So I always like to explain it. My name is Brandon Fong. So I wanted the short link, BFong. So I went and I bought a domain from Nigeria. So it ends in .ng. So the short link is bfo.ng/PRM for PR Maven. And what that's going to do is it's going to take you to a link specifically for the PR Maven listeners. And I figured, I knew we'd be talking about personal branding and how to leverage your personal brand to open the doors to connect with incredible people. And I thought, well, what would be the most valuable way that I could help people do that? And I figured, well, what if I just wrote some magic connection method emails for you, for you to just kind of copy and paste and sample. And so if you go to bfo.ng/PRM, you can get those automatic emails that I created for you, along with some more training on how to open the doors to those relationships and leverage your personal brand. And then if you're liking this content and you want to hear more about how to learn more about the 7-Figure Millennials brand, I have the podcast 7-Figure Millennials, which you can check out on any of your favorite podcasting platforms where you're listening to this right now. But besides that, last thing is, if you do want more information outside of just the free stuff that's on bfo.ng/PRM, you can go to magicconnectionmethod.com. My book is on there, and I'll just toss it in here as well. I give this coupon code specifically for my listeners, but if your listeners want to use it as well to unlock an additional $500 worth of bonuses, you can use the coupon code 7FM at checkout, and I'll include some extra interviews I mentioned earlier with Wayne Breitbarth, the LinkedIn expert. I did an interview with him, did an interview with Joe Polish, and I created a whole bunch of valuable goodies that go in there as well. And the goal is to really just blow your socks off and give you a ton of incredible content that you can apply today. So those are all the ways that you can get into my world and figure out more about how you can implement this stuff.
Well, you're very impressive, Brandon, and thank you so much for offering a gift for the members of PR Maven Nation. I'm sure they'll all appreciate it so much so that they can practice some of the techniques that you've been talking about today.
Awesome. No problem. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope that everyone in PR Maven Nation has a great day. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank you for listening, and if you feel that you've gotten value out of today's conversation, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever app you're using to tune in. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should do so. I release a new episode each week, and subscribing will make sure you get an alert when there's a new episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation by going to prmaven.com/nation and clicking join. It's free, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you have an Alexa-enabled device, be sure to add the PR Maven Marketing Minute to your daily flash briefing menu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.